which we now know everything about that case. And the young man who was possessed was my age at the time. He's my age now. And he has no memory of what happened to him at the age of 14. The Washington Archdiocese has kept in touch with him and his family. And he retired 5 years ago from NASA. He has no memory of, and everything in The Exorcist happened in the actual case and more. There's a very good account of it. One of the few worthwhile books about the case. It's called Possessed. It's by an author named Thomas Allen, who was a CIA analyst. And he wrote a kind of a definitive history of the actual case. So yes, it was based on it. In the 20th century, there are only 3 cases that the Catholic Church in America authenticated as case of demonic possession, and the 49 case was one of them. The one before that was in Iowa somewhere in 1928. It's an older woman.
You should also say that if you're interested in more about that film, the Blu-ray that's out now is just packed with behind-the-scenes information. You guys were shooting a lot of great stuff and all sorts of stories, which reminds me, I have a fanboy question I have to ask. Is this coming out soon? This is a beautiful new print. Is there going to be a Blu-ray of this in the near future?
I'm going to make a Blu-ray of Sorcerer, but it takes me months to do it. And right now I'm editing the film that I finished shooting just before Christmas. And so I hope to, be able to finish that in March and mix it. And then it takes months to make a good Blu-ray. You do it frame by frame and remix the soundtrack. This is a monaural soundtrack. And so we have to remix it into stereo at least, or 5.1. And so I hope to get around to it this year. It was nice to see it on the marquee outside where it said, W. Friedkin live. I'm glad at my age. Because otherwise you don't get a lot of proof of that every morning when you wake up. I don't know where you're waking up.
We have time for maybe 1 or 2 more.
There's a couple of guys.
Do you want to? Okay, this gentleman here.
Why were there 2 directors of photography for Sorcerer, and what was kind of the percentage that each guy did, and why?
Why were there 2 DPs, directors of photography, on Sorcerer, and how did that work out?
Dick Bush, who was the first director of photography, had he was a great lighting cameraman, but he had a lot of difficulty shooting out, in the kind of light that we had when we went out into the woods. And so I brought in a guy that I had worked with in documentary, who was a lot faster and didn't need artificial light to light outside in the woods then to do all those final scenes. His name was John Stevens. Yeah.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
You were talking earlier about how you did with cars, the car chases, even Sorcerer with the truck, there was no CG, and I think it all looks fantastic. I think even in The Exorcist, there's a fantastic makeup effects to this day. They still get me, they still scare me. Anyway, I'm going to know, if you were making those films now, how much would you rely on computer-generated effects?
Can you all hear that?
Yeah.
Okay.
How much would I rely on computer-generated effects if I was making this kind of film or The Exorcist today? Totally. I would take whatever tools there were. The stuff I see today just cuts the crap out of the stuff we did. The chase scenes, like in The Bourne Identity, this guy Paul Greengrass and his crew, that's the best stuff I've ever seen. The last Bourne Identity film, I don't know whether it was Bourne 3 or something, but
Born Again.
Yeah, that stuff's just great, and that's largely CGI. And there's a scene in the first Mission Impossible with Tom Cruise. There's a scene where I'll try to remember it. There's a guy, there's a train that's going through a tunnel, in the English countryside. And Tom Cruise comes into this tunnel on a helicopter and drops down to the train and has a fight with this guy on the roof of the train. And there was no English countryside, no helicopter, and no train. It was all done in a soundstage with green screen and computer-generated imagery. And to me, it was totally convincing. Of course I would use that stuff if I was making a film like this. I mean, everything we did in this was life-threatening. Almost every shot. And there were 50 people who had to leave the film for either injury or gangrene. Or so I got malaria when I came back. And, who the hell wants to live that way? And I just needed to make the film. I wanted to make the film. In those days, if you wanted to make a film like that, you had to go out and do it all mechanically. Now, they do it every bit as convincingly, I think, Josh and Sir. Yes, I would do that. Someone else before we wrap? Yes.
Yeah, pick one more.
Quick question about the river sequence in the truck. Did you lose any of those trucks? Did any of them go into the river? It's such a spectacular sequence.
The bridge?
Oh,
The bridge scene.
They went into the river many times. Oh yeah, we had to fish those trucks out. Sure they did. We actually built that bridge in 3 different places because the place where I first found to build this bridge was in Ecuador. It was a magnificent rushing river, beautiful. There were, mountains on both sides and Mexican jungle, just out in Oaxaca province, and it's part of the Mexican Amazon. And we built the bridge again over this rushing river that had not dried up. The memory of man runneth not to the contrary. And it started to drop. It dropped to about 3 feet. And so we had to do a lot of things to make it look like it was higher than it was. When we built the bridge, the reason the bridge sagged so much is because the river dropped. And we had to drop the bridge. When we came into this little village in Oaxaca to build this bridge, I saw a whole bunch of people, like thousands of people in silhouette on a mountaintop leaving. They were leaving this place. And I asked one of my assistants, who was Mexican, why are they leaving? He said, because the director of The Exorcist is here. and with that, thank you very much.